Hey, look, everybody! Some guy on the internet is giving the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie a positive review. Somebody stop him before his unique and innovative viewpoints threaten to tear the fabric of reality asunder. Yeah, I see you out there smirking. You think you can see right through me, don't you? Where's the twist, you say? What be the catch in all this self-masturbatory prancing about? Is James gonna be contentious just for the sake of being contentious again? What a maroon! What a ta-ra-ra goondie. Well, no, smartass, Doctor Strange is pretty damn good. This isn't the late 90s anymore. We've gotten to the point as a species where calling a comic book movie pretty damn good actually won't make you any less of an obnoxious fart-sniffing movie aficionado. In fact, the onset of superhero movies with such massive cultural stock that the entire yearly release schedule is built around the tandem prominence of them and fucking Star Wars, if anything, allows for the snobs to be at their snobbiest. So the bulk of people will go just to see a movie pumped full of so much money and talent that almost couldn't possibly fail, while assholes like myself will dissect it piece by piece while it's still relevant for them sweet internet points. And we'll get to that in a second, but first some details. Doctor Strange is the tale of a rich, selfish douche nozzle who must seek the help of others after a tragic accident leaves him medically incapable of performing the tasks of his previous occupation, and yes, that does sound a hell of a lot like the first Iron Man. It even includes the token love interest / co-worker who exists solely to save the main character's life once, and in all other scenarios is there only to be dramatic foil, provide poignant one-liners, and generally be disrespected for the entire movie. It also helps that the rich, selfish douche nozzle is played by the only other Hollywood actor besides Christian Bale with enough charisma to actually pull it off. Now, it's all fine and dandy to pay respects to your progenitors. If it weren't for the runaway success of Iron Man, it's unlikely that all of this would have happened. Thankfully, Doctor Strange stopped short of pulling a Force Awakens thanks to its premise. You see, Doctor Strange is a movie about time-space wizardry, whereas Iron Man was about terrorism and dicks. In fact, the thing I find most reassuring about Mr. Dr. Professor Strange is how seriously it doesn't take itself. It never pretends to be something more than it actually does. An ancient group of sorcerers have to stop an interdimensional being that wants to consume the multiverse because that's just kind of what he does. It's that easy. It doesn't get any more complicated than that, and it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to be, oh, we've upset the international geopolitical climate because superheroes are operating without oversight, and despite the fact that we've saved the entire world from complete annihilation multiple times, we're still going to contrive a reason to whine about it for 2.5 godforsaken hours. Which is a lot to expect from a film series that is ostensibly just a bunch of dudes wearing pajamas throwing lightning bolts and heavy things at each other. For once, it's nice to see that one of these movies be self-contained, with only so much as a coyish glance towards the mountain of continuity this series drags around on a chain tied to its ankle. Anyways, back to the movie. The performances are solid all around, and the effects are about as great as they usually are. If, like me, you saw the trailers and were eating up all that Inception-style world-bending stuff, then there's plenty of fun to be had in the visual department alone. The writers toned down the witty banter for this installment, which is another welcome relief, especially since Civil War had a tendency to degenerate into a stand-up comedy routine disguised as an action movie. It's almost like the writers remember that you can give people personalities by methods other than having every other line be a sarcastic quip, so that they can be actual characters instead of a bunch of walking memes. I found the action scenes to be quite inventive, partially because of the visual effects aspect, but also due to a surprisingly thorough application of video game logic of all things. It gave an absorbing quality to what was already one of the most visually entertaining final acts in any of these movies so far. It creates a certain level of absurdity that, again, lets the audience know they're not supposed to be taking this one as seriously. I mean, for crying out loud, Strange defeats one of the bad guys by basically save-scumming at him. I half expected him to beat the final boss by setting his system clock forward a week and letting him die of old age. Heads up, potential spoiler warning. The bulk of my complaints have to do with this movie's resolution, so I'm giving you a warning right now. You can take the rest of the movie at its word, but these I thought were the biggest problems. A lot of the character arcs don't make any sense, and it seems as though the studio kind of forced that to happen so we'd have an excuse for Rachel McAdams and Chiwetel Ejiofor to show up again in Infinity War or whatever. And speaking of Infinity War, I was disappointed to find out in the conclusion that the only reason this movie really exists is just to tell us where the last Infinity Stone is, which kind of makes it seem like this movie was just supposed to be filler. Not that filler is a bad thing. I mean, this is definitely quality filler, but filler is still filler, and it makes the film seem more like an afterthought rather than something they were passionate about making. Now that that's out of the way, I can get to the part I talked about earlier where I get to sound like a complete asshat by overanalyzing everything. Now, it's no secret that Stephen Strange is a doctor, and there's a particular scene where Benedict Cumberbatch waxes on the Hippocratic Oath in his duty as a surgeon to do no harm. So it was kind of a sticking point in the film, given that it is a Marvel movie, that a character can speak of alternative methods of combat when the film is bound by its genre to provide a requisite requisite number of action scenes. For as much of a brains over brawn mentality that Doctor Strange as a character has, there sure was a lot of good old-fashioned fisticuffs to be had. Now, is an action movie that promotes non-violence inherently flawed? Not necessarily. The resolution of Doctor Strange does the concept sufficient enough justice. Granted, it's still flawed for a couple reasons, but hypocrisy is not one of them. Doctor Strange didn't exactly exceed expectations, but it met them perfectly fine. At this point, you'd expect me to trot out the usual internet review horse and wonder aloud when Marvel Studios will manage to make an objectively bad film. Whenever I see that argument, I always wonder, have we not been watching the same movies? Do there exist alternate versions of Iron Man's 2 and 3 that aren't as rank with useless bullshit as they are bereft of any meaningful substance? Or a cut of Thor the Dark World that wasn't an incomprehensible garbage fire from start to finish? Do I seriously have to put... Oh, fuck. Yeah, you're right. I suppose it could always be worse. 7.